Hi everyone, it's Rose Parker, and today we're back with another episode to talk about one of the hardest parts of the period I call my recovery. Now, if you're not familiar with me and my story, I define my recovery as a period of time between 2018 and 2019 when I was in heavy treatment for schizoaffective disorder and DID. During this time, I integrated my alters from DID and recovered from my bipolar 1 symptoms of schizoaffective, changing my diagnosis to schizophrenia, and my psychosis went from being so severe I had to drop out of university to being able to return to university and eventually graduating with honors, and now I am heading into graduate school. So during my recovery, I had to learn how to read again. And this often surprises people because it's not something you hear about very often. But I lost the ability to read because of my cognitive symptoms to my schizophrenia, and I'm going to talk about it. I've talked about it in my posts before, and I have made one post exploring it in detail, but that was a long time ago, so I wanted to make something a bit more permanent talking about it. So, going back, I was a little bit of a late bloomer in reading, actually. I was a bit resistant to it. But once I really got started reading, I was very into reading. I scored in the top percentile on the reading exams in school, like perfect scores, and I would just zoom through books. I had a college reading level in like 7th grade, and yeah, it was great. I loved reading. It was a very good positive thing for me because I didn't have really friends. I didn't have a social life. It was an escape. It was a way to build my self-esteem when I was being bullied and was very isolated. But then things started to take a little bit of a downward turn. In about 6th, 7th grade, I began to struggle with reading just a little bit. It started to seem less interesting. This I now know is anhedonia. And this is when my psychotic symptoms started to really pick up. And it became harder. The words were cloudy. They would move around. And I always had word hallucinations. My word hallucinations, basically, the words would lift off the page and move around. They would double up, they would blur, they would change color and glow and flip around and wiggle, and they would have a halo around them. And I had always had these. I had learned to read with the word hallucinations, but they began to get more intense and more intrusive in 6th and 7th grade. They began to be a problem. And it got to the point where in high school I began to have real distaste for reading, and I really only read for school because I had to. I only read a couple of books in high school for fun. I think I read Perks of Being a Wallflower, 1984, and a couple books on mental health. And it was a big self-esteem hit for me because I was in the nerdy group of friends in high school, and a lot of the other girls read. They read a lot. And the fact that I didn't like reading, they thought I was less intelligent. They were kind of snooty to me about it. And I was a slower reader than a lot of people, and people took fast reading to be a sign of intelligence. And it was getting harder and harder, and my assignments were taking longer and longer, and I didn't know what was going on. At one point, I asked to be tested for dyslexia, and I did get tested for dyslexia at the school, but I had absolutely perfect reading comprehension. So I couldn't be diagnosed with dyslexia, even though I had all these bizarre symptoms, which of course I know I don't have dyslexia, I have schizophrenia. But the teacher there that was evaluating me, she didn't really know what to make of it. She didn't have a diagnosis. She thought maybe one of my chronic illnesses was messing with my eye muscles, but because they couldn't diagnose me with a learning disorder, I couldn't really get any accommodations. Besides, I could ask to have assignments printed in larger font, but I was afraid to use that accommodation because I had been so harassed for my invisible disabilities. I was afraid of the other kids harassing me and saying I was being a drama queen or I was doing things for attention. So I didn't use the one measly accommodation I was given for it, which I kind of regret. But anyway, so as things moved forward, I got to university and my reading problems were worse. It was really difficult for me to read my textbooks. I started off as a biology major, and the textbooks in my science classes were dense. They were big and wide with small print close together. And they took me hours and hours and hours to read. And I was reading, and I was studying hard. I was reading in detail. I was analyzing. I was annotating, and the hallucinations did not help at all. And it just made it absolutely miserable. I was exhausted. I was drained. I was in pain. I had akathisia. I would read my books in bed and then go straight to sleep. And I had no normal sleep schedule because my life just revolved around reading those textbooks and the pain of reading those textbooks. And it just got worse. And reading the books was such a stress, it made going to class harder. I missed a lot of class because often it was a choice between reading the books or going to class because reading the books was so stressful. And as I got sicker and I had my psychotic reset, it was just worse because after my psychotic reset, I had more anhedonia, I had more avolition, and the word hallucinations just kept getting more and more intense. And my comprehension got worse. My memory and comprehension got worse. So my short-term memory, remembering what I had just read, being able to store the information as I read it, and my comprehension, being able to even understand what I was reading, got worse. And eventually spring 2018 hits, and I'm just reading a book. I can't understand what's saying. I'm like, I have enough, and I drop out. And basically, I get home, and it's winter 2018, and I can't read anymore. Like a couple words, that's it. It goes blank. It doesn't register. It's like my brain has had enough. And I get in with my current therapist, Miss B, and we start working on, okay, what can we do to fix this? What can we do to make Rose more functional? And we do art therapy, but we also do rehabilitation therapy. And one thing that we do is audiobooks. And audiobooks are an adaptation. Okay, if Rose can't read, Rose can listen to audiobooks. And I start listening to audiobooks. And at first, even they're too much. Like, just being able to pay attention to the words of the audiobooks is so draining. And it takes me so long to get through them. I have to replay a lot of parts. But eventually I get through one audiobook. And then I get through another. And I get through another. And it gets easier. And most of the books I'm listening to are on mental health. And eventually I notice my comprehension improving. And my retention is improving. And eventually I'm starting to just go through a bunch of them really rapidly. And I'm realizing I'm getting my vocabulary back. I'm getting my attention span back. I'm getting my memory back. And then I try a paperback, or not a hardcover book. And it takes me a month to get through The Disordered Mind, by Eric Kandel. And it's a pop sci book. It's not that dense, and it shouldn't have taken a normal person that long to get through it. But it took me a month to get through it, and it was agonizing getting through that book. Partially because it's not that great a book, but a lot of it was because of about how difficult it is for me to read, what it was for me to read. And but I got through it, and getting through the book gave me the confidence to try another. So I tried another, and I tried another, and then I began slowly rebuilding my speed, and then eventually I'm reading medical textbooks. And then within a year, I am reading Chaucer in Middle English. So basically, learning to read again was rebuilding my stamina. I had to rebuild stamina for attention. I had to rebuild stamina for handling larger words. I had to rebuild my memory's capacity. And it took a long time. I was really dedicated to this. Basically, when I wasn't in therapy or at the doctor's, I was working on my reading or my art therapy. So I was focusing on my treatment 24/7. I wouldn't have gotten the results I did if I hadn't been so dedicated. But it was worth it. I think I read better now than I did before. So yeah. It was really hard, and it felt really defeating at times, especially before I realized that there was a way out of it. But I want to say, if you are struggling with schizophrenia, psychosis symptoms, and you feel like you are defeated, there is hope for improvement. You're not guaranteed to be stuck. There are treatments available. Sometimes you just have to think a little outside the box, like with the audiobooks. But it's not a death sentence. And I hope in my work, in part, to inspire people that this isn't the life-ending illness it's often portrayed to be, that positive life with schizophrenia is possible. And anyway, thank you for joining me, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.